All right, hey everybody, Teching and Barry here again. I don't really have anything funny for this intro, but I will say that I'm very excited because I am this close to being caught up with Kingdom. It's been a long ride. There's 800 chapters of this series. I am on chapter 700 right now. I'm so close. And it's that feeling that you only get every once in a while when you're reading a really, really, really long manga and you're just about to get caught up, okay? It's that feeling that I can't really describe. So I just wanted to ask you, how long did it take you to get caught up to One Piece? I assume if you're watching this video about something that happened in the last chapter of One Piece, then you're caught up with One Piece. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're like, I don't know, Tekking, I'm at Thriller Bark right now, but I'll just watch whatever you put out. I'm like, all right, I would suggest you catch up to the series, but, watch it whenever. But yeah, how long did it take you to, I can't remember exactly, because I was very scattershotted with how I got caught up with One Piece. I was back in high school when that happened. But in the case with Kingdom, it's taken me a little over 2 months. I started reading Kingdom again for like the third time, like when I was trying to get all the way through it back in like May. And so we're almost at the end there. And I probably will make a video on it once I conclude because it's a really good series. But anyway, today we are discussing One Piece, chapter 1121. So Vegapunk's message concludes, at least we can assume it concludes. We actually do not know if it's concluded or not. Vegapunk in the next chapter could just be like, yes, the new era, whoever finds the One Piece, the world will be at their fingertips. Anyway, I still have you here for a while, so I'm just going to advertise my new vacuum cleaner, But something else he says in his message earlier in the chapter that was also very interesting that might have gotten overlooked by some people just because, you had the final double-page spread and you had Shanks' hot sister making an appearance, and it's just like, okay, that's the focus, probably the man marked by flames and stuff. But earlier in the chapter, Vegapunk says this. I have the official translation up here. I'm just going to read this to you. The machinations of history and fate seem to insist upon the obliteration of those last descendants of rare races, okay? And as Vegapunk is saying that throughout the history, ever since the Void Century, these three specific races are being targeted to be annihilated. We have a shot of Kuma as a buccaneer. His father was as well, Clap. Then we have a shot of Marco, where he's just like reminiscing about like this time that Whitebeard talked about. There's gods up on the red line and they're called Lunarians, right? And then that transitions to King, who is a Lunarian, possibly the last Lunarian, in a mysterious location. We actually do not know if he is still in the Udon prison at Wano. Somebody brought up that since Aramaki went and, took out all of the beast pirates in the prison, did Aramaki capture them and bring them back with them? Or is that another prison that Albert is in right now? Or is it still in Wano? And then we have Pudding, who is currently still captured in Blackbeard's flagship, the Saber of Zebek. Okay, and we saw her, we saw her in the cover page getting captured by Van Augur and Aokiji, and then later on we see her when Blackbeard was fighting Law. We cut to the inside of the brig of his ship, and we see Pudding in there as well, okay? And they're all thinking about various moments in their lives where they were told just by being born that itself is a crime. Okay, so Kuma, who, by the way, keep in mind, Kuma is the PX-0 at this point. He's just a robot sitting on the giant ship as they're trying to escape, and it seems to imply Kuma is having a flashback. So Kuma's memories are not all gone, if that is the case, because he's reminiscing about a time when he was talking with Vegapunk about, hey, what's so special about me being a buccaneer anyway? And Vegapunk's like, oh, Quasar, yes, you're a buccaneer, oh my goodness. There seems to be a couple of things with that. We know buccaneers are basically humans that have giant blood in them, I guess, like a human giant hybrid, very much how Wotons, nobody ever talks about Wotons, but Wotons are half giant, half fishman. So I'm wondering if Wotons are also, in the similar vein of Buccaneer, are also, hunted by the world government, okay? We don't actually specify just these three, because there are others that we don't see very many of, so I'm just saying if Buccaneers are hunted because they have giant blood in them, then Wotons would be the same. as well as, I guess, regular giants. That might be what happened with the ancient giants. We don't really know exactly about that, right? And so there was a couple of reasons why they're special. There's another reason, like Vegapunk never really clarified it, but he's like, oh, there's another reason why Buccaneers are so unique, and that is, and then he like trailed off, and we never learned what that was. Then we have the Lunarians that King is a member of, and he's reminiscing. He's thinking back to the world government being willing to pay 100 million berries to just find out information on where they are at. That is how much the government wants Lunarians wiped out. They are willing to pay 100 million. Keep in mind, that is the amount of Luffy's second bounty. Luffy had to defeat a warlord of the sea to get a bounty of 100 million. That is a bounty that is like, you are part of the next generation of pirates. And that's the amount of money the government's willing to fork over just to find information on a Lunarian. Not even like bringing in a Lunarian, okay? So, King, as far as we know, as far as he's concerned, because he said it before, like, I am the last one, right? And we don't know. There might be some others out there, but, like, we can assume that King, his family, his parents, if he had any siblings, his brothers or sisters or whoever, they are most likely all dead because of him to say that. So they were probably maybe killed right in front of him. Oh God, I just realized something horrible. Like Albert was taken into Punk Hazard, and they ran like endurance tests on him. Like they basically threw him into a furnace for like hours or maybe even days to see how long he could endure. Like, oh, Lunarians are immune to flames, huh? Well, let's test that, what if like he also did have siblings that might have been taken to Punk Hazard with him and they were killed by those tests, and he was the one that had the highest endurance, so he was able to survive, but he was like very confident that like there's none of them left. I am the last Lunarian, okay? Which sounds like a really cool name for a movie, The Last Lunarian, right? So he's there. I mean, I guess, yeah, the Seraphim as well. The Seraphim are like artificially created like clones of him. But yeah, as the last natural Lunarian, that might be the case with King. And then we have Pudding, who is a member of the Third Eye tribe, okay? And it's interesting, we don't know how many of the members of the Third Eye tribe there are. I would say that there's at least one other, because Pudding is a half Third Eye tribe member. She's half human, half third eyes, because Big Mom had 2 eyes, and I guess, Pudding's dad had 3 eyes, so they had 5 eyes, so Pudding is a 2.5 eye. There you go, I don't know. So I would assume that, but here's the thing. The whole reason why Big Mom wanted to have a member of the Third Eye tribe in her family was because they have a ability that once it's awakened, they can read poneglyphs. They might have like the ability to awaken your third eye so you can like read the voices of all things, or any script that's put in front of you, you might be able to read it exactly. Like that's their special ability, right? And so she wanted Pudding so she can, read the road poneglyphs, and so Big Mom could find the One Piece and be king of the pirates and everything like that, okay? And there's probably not very many members of the Third Eye tribe left in the world. So let me ask you a serious question here, okay? If you're Big Mom and you need to find somebody out there that can read poneglyphs so you can find the greatest treasure in the world, and you find a member of the tribe, and then you get it on with that person, and you have a child that's in your family, because that's Big Mom's thing. It's family is everything. Okay, she's a big fan of the Fast and Furious movies. Okay, family is everything, right? So once she's like, oh, once I have a child that is a member of the Third Eye tribe, then I can trust them more than I could with somebody else, right? You'd think Big Mom after that, like, she would exterminate all the other members of the Third Eye tribe, because she doesn't want anybody else learning about where the One Piece is. The more people in the world that have the ability to read poneglyphs, that's more of a detriment to you than an advantage at that point. Big Mom would probably want the only member of the Third Eye tribe in her family so that she has control over them. Now, in the case with Pudding, she was, I think, starting to realize that, like, yeah, my mom never loved me, and, the family, thinks I'm creepy and weird and everything like that. So, kind of the same thing with Katakuri. Maybe Katakuri was like, yeah, this is kind of a messed up situation we're in, honestly, But the idea, on the surface was that Big Mom's like, oh, I have a child that's a Third Eye tribe member. They'll do exactly what I say. Yeah, mama. So, it's possible that, like, after, Pudding's father's job was done, she might have just, right then and there, okay? I think there's probably still a few more out there in the world. So I bring reference to a particular, I'm just going to pull it up here manually. There is, during Sabaody, there was the auction price list, right? Remember that thing? It's right here. So when Sanji and Duval are heading to the auction house to like stop them from selling Kami, Duval hands him this list. And this list is actually like foreshadowing for a bunch of different races and tribes that we don't see for a while in One Piece. Like Oda could have just wrote down a bunch of random like dwarves, whatever. But no, actually dwarves are introduced later, the Tontatas, and we see Leo and everybody, right? Okay. So what do we have here on this list? It lists humans, dwarves, minks. Coincidentally, Beppo, the very first mink in the story, was debuted during the Sabaody arc, so that's interesting. It says long hands, so it's long arms, long legs, snake necks, which the snake necks, I don't think we've seen any, we've seen half snake necks. We've seen Mascarpone and Jascarpone as children of Big Mom. Also, Amande and her immediate sisters are also long snake neck tribe members, but I don't think we've ever seen like their homeland or anything like that. Fishmen, giants, mermaids, ability users at the bottom. That's like any random devil fruit user they brought in, right? So you notice on this list, you don't see Skypian or, Birkin or Shandorian. You also do not see Lunarian or Third Eye Tribe member or Buccaneer or Wotan either. But if you look to the side, you see other exotic species special price. So that implies that there are other species in the world. They're just not abundant enough to have a base price at the auction house. And that's such a messed up thing to say, but that's, like slavery exists in the One Piece world, right? And even Sanji was disgusted by this, and then they go up to the auction house and they beat the crap out of everybody, and Disco is homeless now, so that's good. Disco is like living in the ruins of the auction house right now, and he's just like getting drunk, and he's like, damn Rayleigh and Luffy and Kid and Law, man, this sucks. Man, Disco is probably wishing nothing but death on all of them. He's just like, man, I hope Eustace Kid gets sliced in half by a Yonko, and I hope Law gets beaten by an evil purveyor of darkness, and I hope Rayleigh dies of alcohol poisoning. So maybe it was Disco the whole time. He made like a voodoo doll of Eustace Law or something. I don't know, but he's very vindictive. Anyway, so this list implies, there are probably a few other tribes out there, like the Third Eye Tribe. There's just not enough of them to be warranted a base price. And if they ever did bring one in, then, they would be very valuable and everything, right? So, it's the idea that they have been hunted for a very, very, very long time. Now, with the Third Eye Tribe, it makes perfect sense for all the reasons I explained already. If they have the ability to hear voices of all things or read any script, then they are the ones that are most likely going to be able to read the poneglyphs just by a natural ability, not by researching or doing whatever the scholars of Ohara were doing, like the way Olvia and Robin learned how to read poneglyphs. They can just do it. So the government probably came to the conclusion pretty quick, we gotta wipe them out because we don't want anybody reading these stones, okay? Then with the Lunarians, it really does seem like the government is afraid of the Lunarians, like because of their natural abilities and the fact they were originally the rulers of the Red Line, like maybe the original gods of the world. Like I could totally see that, like way back in the day. Before there was, maybe Castle Pangaea was up there originally, but it looks like something the government built. So originally though, let's say there was a kingdom on top of the Red Line, and that's where all the Lunarians lived, and they are very, very strong. Like, you've seen how strong Albert is, okay? When he fought against Zoro, like, he's insanely powerful. Zoro had to be he had to be pretty tactical in order to figure out how to defeat him, and we've seen how powerful the Seraphim are as well. Now imagine an army of kings. And the Lunarians back in the day might have been way stronger than King. But like imagine an army of kings that are on top of the Red Line. That would have been an uphill battle for the world government or the allied forces back in the day to wipe them all out, kick them off of the Red Line, and then make their own city, Marijois, the Holy Land, on top of it. Okay, so they probably see Lunarians as like, if there's any Lunarians out there in the world that are still alive and thriving and making more Lunarians, they could actually legitimately challenge the world government's power. Also, the fact that they can fly. Now, the Skypeans as well, they have wings, but I don't think we've really seen the Skypeans fly with their wings. In the case with, like, unless they have a devil fruit power, obviously, like Eneru. Now, in the case with King, it's interesting because he does have an ancient zone that allows him to fly. He can turn into a Pteranodon. But I believe his wings, his normal wings, do allow him to fly. However, I went back and checked, and yeah, Zoro sliced off part of King's wing during their fight. So I don't think King is able to fly anymore under his own wings, but if he transformed into a Pteranodon, his arms become wings. Yeah, so it makes sense, though, the government would be fearful of them because they're really strong, they're hard to kill, and they can fly. So an army of them could come up to the red line anytime and attack and, like, wipe them out. So that's probably why the government wants them dead so damn badly. Okay, so that makes sense for Lunarians, and that makes sense for Third Eye tribe members. One can read poneglyphs, one could challenge the government in terms of power, okay? Then we have the Buccaneers, which we just learned about in this arc, Egghead. So when Big Mom was going over all of the different races that lived in her country, she mentioned there were 3 that were not in Tatoland, okay? Like, giants were one, because giants hate Big Mom for the whole thing with the flashback and everything. And then Lunarian was another one. When we got to Wano, Big Mom mentioned Lunarians are not in Totland. And then I'm assuming the third one she meant was Buccaneer. But then again, we also have not seen anybody with wings in Totland as well, like no sky races existing in Totland. So I guess it's also possible Big Mom could have just been grouping, like, every race that has wings together, which that's rather rude, I would say. Now, the reason why Buccaneers are hated by the world government, why they're targeted, I believe it's because of Joy Boy. I believe Joy Boy was a Buccaneer. And we see this in the freezer section of the Castle Pangea at Marijois, a big straw hat. And that was most likely Joy Boy's straw hat. And then, you know, the idea that, like, Roger also has a straw hat. He gave it to Shanks. Shanks gave it to Luffy. Like, the straw hat itself is, like, important in terms of, like, symbolism and stuff in One Piece. But, yeah, I don't think it's a hat big enough necessarily for a fully fledged giant, but certainly big enough for somebody like Whitebeard or Kuma or another Buccaneer, as in the case with Joy Boy, all right? So it would also make sense. It's definitely up the government's alley to be like, okay, Third Eye tribes can read the poneglyphs, let's wipe them out. Lunarians can fly up and attack us in the red line, let's wipe them out. Buccaneers, Joy Boy was a Buccaneer. We want to make sure that no other members of that tribe rise to prominence and attack us again. We don't want another Joy Boy. Wipe them all out, you know? So I think that makes sense there too. And also just a general racism that exists in the government. There's other races, too, that we haven't really explored too much. In Big Mom's library, there's the mushroom people, the Kino Kobito, that are inside a book. There's also a couple of others that come about through devil fruits, like the toys that Sugar created with her Hobby Hobby no Mi, or the zombies from the Kage Kage no Mi, or the homies that the Soul fruit can create, you know. So there's other, like, species that exist through devil fruits, but just in terms of, like, naturally occurring races, there's some that we haven't discussed. And then there's hybrid races like Derringer. Derringer was half fishman, and like I said, the Wotons, you know, as well. But yeah, so specifically, though, there are others, but very specifically in the last chapter, Oda focused on Buccaneer, Lunarian, Third Eye tribe members. Now, I mean, we're going to learn about the whole history during the Void. We'll probably see a lot more representatives of these races back then. But I think also Oda was focusing on putting King and Kuma specifically, as they still have a big part to play in all this, especially after the hundreds of years of prejudice and oppression. It would be so poetic for them to rise back up and, you know, play a huge part in defeating the world government. You know what I mean? Like Pudding playing a role, King, you know, breaking out. And actually, you know what's interesting about King? King's whole thing was he was convinced Kaido was Joy Boy. Kaido was the next Joy Boy, and he was going to, you know, assist Joy Boy in carrying out the prophecy of his people, of the Lunarians and all that, right? So Kaido is clearly not Joy Boy. But Luffy is. Definitively, authoritatively, Luffy is the next reincarnation of Joy Boy, or the next one to bear the title of Joy Boy. Now, remember, while that fight was going on, while Luffy was going all Gear 5th and Toon Force and bouncing around and beating the shit out of Kaido, King was defeated by Zoro at that point. So he was, like, unconscious at that point. So he wasn't there to witness all of that. And then he was probably maybe told about that after the fact. Like, after he regained consciousness and they threw him in the Udon prison, maybe King learned about, like, oh yeah, no, turns out Straw Hat Luffy was the true reincarnation of the sun god Nika. He's Joy Boy. You'd think, given King's backstory and everything, he might actually try to help Luffy out now. Now, right at this moment, he's all banged up and injured, and then, like I said, we don't know for certain if he's still in the Udon prison in the last chapter or if he's somewhere else. But if he's sitting around thinking about this, I mean, there's a grieving period with King. I mean, he really liked Kaido. You know, Kaido freed him from Punk Hazard, and he looked up to him, and he's like, I'll never sell you out, Albert. Actually, you should be called King. And Albert's like, I like that name. You know, and so they were good friends, and it was like his first mate on the crew. So there's a grieving period there of like, man, Kaido, I'm going to miss you, man. You were a good friend, you know? But after that period is over, King might start, like, thinking about this, like, well, Kaido wasn't Joy Boy, but this Straw Hat kid, Zoro's captain, he is. Like, he looks just like the Lunarians would most likely know what the sun god looks like, you know? Just like how the Buccaneers worship Nika, same thing with the Lunarians, probably, although, you know, lunar, moon, sun god, sun, so there's probably a thing going on there. I'm not really sure exactly how that would work. Maybe two different gods, possibly, like a moon god and a sun god. Maybe they're at odds with one another. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're complementary. Who knows? Because a lot of times in mythology, you'll either have, like, the sun and moon were created at the same time. Something like that. You know, it's possible. So it's very likely that King, if he gets freed from wherever he's at, you know, him showing up and helping Luffy out, I don't think that would really be that surprising, honestly. I think that honestly makes sense. Also, especially since the Seraphim are really involved now, and the Seraphim have his DNA, King showing up and coming face-to-face with the Seraphim would also be like, oh, what is this now? What did Vegapunk do with my DNA? This is not cool. You know, like, so that would be interesting. I think King still has a part to play in the story. Pudding certainly does. Because, you know, she's been captured by Blackbeard and everything, so she's supposed to be used by Blackbeard in order to read the poneglyphs, most likely. That's going to be her job. But she has connections to Sanji as well, so it'd be nice to see Pudding again assisting the Straw Hats. And then, of course, we have Kuma, and Kuma is going to Elbaf alongside Bonnie and everybody else as soon as they escape from the Gorosei. It's possible that if And maybe it's possible that Kuma could get his memories back. Like I said, he arrived to defend Bonnie, and here in this chapter, it seems like he's having a flashback, so it's possible, right? Now, it could just be Oda, like, showing Kuma on the ship and then having the flashback. Also, maybe the same thing with, like, Marco and Whitebeard. Like, in the middle of these three characters being shown, Kuma, Albert, and Pudding, we also have Marco on Sphinx Island listening to the message, reminiscing about what Whitebeard told him. And so the idea is, well, what if Whitebeard is also a Buccaneer? There's a lot of really big humans in the One Piece world that, I mean, the explanation I always gave for that was that they had giant blood in them. Like, you know, there's giants that exist, so they probably mingled with humans every now and then, and that's how you get really huge people like Whitebeard, right? You know, so possibly, maybe not Whitebeard's parents, but his grandparents, great-grandparents, like back in the day, one of his ancestors was a giant. And so if that is what you call a human-giant hybrid is a Buccaneer, then I believe Whitebeard would have also been a Buccaneer, right? I think that just makes sense there. And then also Whitebeard being around the block more than once. He's an older guy. I mean, he's dead now, but back when Marco was thinking about it, like, he would know some stuff about the world. Yeah, legend has it, there were gods up there on the Red Line at one point. That's the Lunarians, right? So, yeah. So, I think there's other members of the Third Eye Tribe out there. I don't think there's any more Lunarians. I think King might be the last one, okay? Aside from the Seraphims. So, they might be, I mean, like, going along with the Germa tech and Vegapunk's technology, it might be possible to, bring the Lunarians back through cloning technology. I mean, we've attempted to do that in our own world. I think we've even done it successfully a few times where we've taken some extinct species and tried to bring them back using cloning tech. It's possible that that could happen with the Lunarians. And then the Buccaneers, we know that Kuma was a Buccaneer and his dad was, but, Clap is dead now. Bonnie is not a Buccaneer because her mother was Ginny, who was a normal human, and then her father was a celestial dragon. We do not know who. I suppose S. Bear as well would be a Buccaneer because, so the same thing, maybe cloning technology could bring these almost completely annihilated races back to fruition and back to repopulate with the technology that exists in the One Piece world. Of course, the world government has to be, at least the Tenryubito have to be removed, and the Gorosei and Eam all have to be wiped out in order for this to happen, right? So yeah, it's interesting Oda focused on these characters and what they're going to do later in the story, and I just wanted to bring that up to everybody in case you overlooked that in the last chapter. But yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. That was the video. This will be Tekking and Barry, Whitebeard, Big Ma'am back here, signing out. Later, everybody. Big Ma'am!